Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Jagadanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamunatira Ramachari Yamunatira Ramachari Jaya Radha Madhava Ganga Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Which verse? 15:6. 15:6. The Yoga of the Supreme Person. A reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 15, text 7, one apology accepted, and the Yoga of the Supreme Person. Jai. Well, last night's verse was in Hindi. Yeah, that's right. Mamaivam so jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashastani Indriyani Prakriti Stani Kashati Mamaivam so Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manashastani Indriyani Prakriti Stani Kashati Mamaivam so Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manasastani Indriyani Prakriti Stani Kashati Hamso Jivaloke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti. Mama Evam So Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti Stani Kashati. Mama Evam So Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti Stani Kashati. Mama Vamso Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti Stani Kashati. Mama Vamso Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti Stani Kashati. Any more? Mama Vamso Jiva Loke. Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Mama Sastani Indriyani. Prakriti Stani Kashati. Joy. Mama, my. Eva, certainly. Amsha, fragmental particle. Jiva Loke, in the world of conditional life. Jiva Bhuta, the conditioned living entity. Sanatana, eternal. Mana, with the mind. Sastani, the six. Indriyani, senses. Prakriti, in material nature. Stani, situated. Kashati, is struggling hard. Translation. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Please repeat. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life and in his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He's eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatana. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Ram, Nrsingadev, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual living entities of Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities also have fragmental portions of His qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has his personal individuality in a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and he is under the engagement of the transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse, that a conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes. But his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in Majjananyana Shruti. Savai Esha Brahmanishta Idam Sariram Mratyam Atishrija Brahma Bhishma Pavdya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Srinoti Brahmanayu Devam Sarvam Anubhavati. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives the spiritual body. And in his spiritual body, he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personalities as he is. From Smriti also it is understood, Vashanti Yatra Purusha Sarve Vaikuntha Mortayaha. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets the spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Mamai Vamsa, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word sanatan, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Dehinosmin yata dehe. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcels of gold are also gold. Omagana Timanandasya Kanangana Shalakaya Chakshuran Malitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So, this is a theme that's spoken about by Krishna right throughout Bhagavad Gita. We are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. In the mainstream religions outside of Sanatana Dharma, the idea is very, very low-level understanding of what is spirit soul. The idea is there, that we're part and parcel of God. But we only become part and parcel of God when we enter the human form of life. Before that, we don't exist. So it's a very misconstrued understanding of what is the spirit soul. The spirit soul, ultimately, at the topmost level, reaches the level of 76% of the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There are other figures given for Lord Shiva. There are other figures given for Vishnu Tattva. Only Krishna is 100%. Because Krishna has all the qualities. Like, for instance, Vishnu Tattva. Lord Nrsimhadev, he doesn't play the flute, he doesn't dance with the gopis, he doesn't engage in Rasa Leela. His mood is one of anger. So that's one mood of the Supreme Lord. And each and every expansion of the Supreme Lord exhibits a different mood. There's Matsya, there's Kurma, there's Varaha. So they all have different moods. It's only Krishna's, all the expansions in the verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the final conclusion is Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. So why are we interested in Krishna? Because this is our sampradaya. There are other sampradayas, and they're interested in the Supreme Personality of Godhead from a different angle. There's the Sri Sampradaya, there's the Rudra Sampradaya. There's so many different sampradayas. They all have, ultimately, as their Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Lord. But it's only in our sampradaya that we have this personal relationship with Krishna. And that personal relationship with Krishna is there at every moment in time, as it is stated in this purport. That personal relationship with Krishna is there right now. Right at this very moment in time. It exists. And we are engaged in the supreme loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 24/7, eternally. It doesn't stop. But because temporarily we have misidentified with the body, then of course that service is interrupted. Just like when you're asleep at night, you can dream all kinds of things. You can dream you're a king, you can dream you're a street sweeper, you can dream you're a peasant, you're a pauper, you're a beggar, you're in charge of a country, you're a big, big personality. All kinds of things go on in the mind at night. And then, of course, in the mind, we can also imagine that when we're being attacked in a dream, we actually imagine that that dream is reality. If you're being attacked by a tiger in your dream, you wake up and sweat. Because for you, it's real. So similarly with this life, this material life, it is temporary, it is not really there, because we're misidentifying with something that we're not. That's like if someone lives to be 90 years old, for example, which is considered to be a ripe old age in this day and age, and you sleep an average of 8 hours a day, on average. Some people sleep more, some people sleep less. Average is 8 hours. So out of those 90 years, you have spent 30 years sleeping. Out of 90, 30 years completely and totally in ignorance of who you are. You're Mr. So-and-so. You're Mrs. So-and-so. You have this identity that you relate to in your waking environment. But for 30 years of that environment, and when you're in that particular body, you have no idea who you are. And you dream all kinds of things that go on in your head in the middle of the night while you're sleeping. And they're not real. But you identify with them very, very realistically. And like to give that example, if you're attacked by an animal in the middle of the dream, you identify with that as real. You wake up in sweat. And other people in the same house as you, they have to calm you down and say, no, relax. You're dreaming. So it's the same with this life. We identify with something that we are not. That's the very meaning of the word Maya, that which is not. So we go through millions of lifetimes like this we reach such a stage that we're so conditioned by this material existence that we're convinced that it's real. Yes, you can touch your body, you can touch the table, you can touch your head. It's certainly real, but that's not you. That's the external image of who you are. You have an original identification with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I have been reading over the last few days, Jai Shri Shri Rukmini Dwakadi Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki. I've been reading this book, Prema Vilas. It's about the pastimes of these great personalities who were there around the time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Absolutely brilliant book. And I was reading about Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur, he was born as a very, very special devotee. He was gifted with the love of Godhead practically from birth. And he went to Vrindavan, and he was trained by his spiritual master, Lokanath Goswami. So Lokanath Goswami, he persuaded him, you chant Hare Krishna, you engage in kirtan, you engage in chanting your rounds. So Narottam Das Thakur, he took a vow that he would chant 1 lakh of names per day. And then he eventually increased it to 2 lakh of names per day. So practically speaking, he was chanting 24 hours a day. So one night in a dream, he had the dream, Radharani appeared to him in a dream. And Radharani told him, at a certain point of time in the day, in Krishna Leela, Krishna, he likes to take kheer, sweet rice. So you should go to the devotees, the gopis, who are cooking the sweet rice for Krishna. And you should assist in this cooking of the sweet rice. So in his dream, he was also assisting the gopis to cook the sweet rice for Krishna. And then in his dream, as he was cooking the sweet rice, it boiled over and became too overheated. So he picked the pot off the cooker to put it on the ground to take it off the heat. And he burnt his thumb. And he woke up. And when he woke up from the dream, his real thumb was actually burnt. So this is the difference between dreaming of spiritual engagement and dreaming of material engagement. So when he went to Lokanath Goswami and he made the report, Lokanath Goswami was amazed. He said, "You have developed pure love of Godhead. You are engaging in the service of the gopis right now, right here in this very body." This is Narottam Das Thakur. So we are also in the same position. We are spirit soul. We are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because we're divorced from the reality of who we are, we imagine ourselves to be something else, then we're engaging in so many different activities other than service to Krishna. Of course, to a large extent, those of us who've been fortunate enough to encounter some form of devotional service, our whole life is also an act of devotion, or can be seen as being an act of devotion. But very few people are involved in this act of devotion. So we can dovetail whatever we do in the service of the Lord. By dovetail, it's like when you're making a piece of furniture, you make a joint, what's known as a dovetail joint, and they're locked together. So we dovetail our lives in the service of Krishna. This is the way in which we make progress. And in order to do that, we simply have to be thinking of Krishna 24/7. Krishna says in the 9th chapter, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavrata namaschantyastamam bhakcha nityayukta upashate. Always chanting my glories, always chanting my glories. Endeavoring with great determination, bound down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Krishna says always, twice in the same shloka. Nitya yukta upashate. So this is our goal. We may not be on that stage yet. We may not be on the stage of Narottam Das Thakur, who was a pure devotee of the Lord. He was born some 10 years after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But he took on the whole mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was given benediction directly by Mahaprabhu, who appeared to him in reality, not in a dream. He appeared to him in reality at the age of 12 years old. And he immediately left home and went to Vrindavan. And today we revere his writings, his books, and we take benediction from all the wonderful songs of Narottam Das Thakur. But he was given that mercy by the mercy of Mahaprabhu, by the mercy of his spiritual master. And that mercy is open to all of us through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. It is open to all of us. Not this idea of merging into the oneness of the Supreme and merging into the light and becoming a part of the oneness and the Brahma Jyoti and all this, which is very, very modern today. If any people are engaging in spiritual life, this is the topmost level that they feel they have to reach. Merging, becoming one with God. There's no need for us to become one with God. We're all already part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. This is not an aspiration. This is not something that we should reach towards or have as an objective or a goal. We're already there. Just like the drop, as Prabhupada gives the example so many times, the drop taken out of the ocean is the same quality as the ocean. We have the same quality as the Supreme Lord. But we just have to bring it to the stage of realization. In the process of sadhana bhakti, the step-by-step sage, under the guidance of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master will certainly give us a test. And we're being tested 24/7, practically speaking, by the material energy of the Lord, which is also Krishna's energy, but his separated energy, completely different from the Hladini Shakti, the internal energy. which is full of bliss and knowledge and eternality. But even now, in this particular body, as devotees, it is all temporary. And gradually we will realize our eternal, our Siddha Deha, that will come to us, that will be revealed as we progress on the path. By reading about the lives of the great personalities who have gone before us, by studying the scriptures, by following the orders of the spiritual master, by engaging in the service of the Lord. This will come, and it will come naturally, just like with Narottam Das Thakur. He was simply following the orders of the spiritual master, and he reached the stage of perfection. And we have to do the same. Simply follow the orders of the spiritual master. Prabhupada said, at the very early days in Iskcon, up to 1970, 1969, 1970, when practically speaking the movement hadn't expanded that much. Yes, we had opened a temple in London, we'd opened a temple in Hamburg, some in Canada, San Francisco and New York, but not much more beyond that. Prabhupada said, and he translated very few of the books, very few. But Prabhupada said at that point, everything is in my books. Everything is in my books. You simply follow the instructions of the books, and we see from Prabhupada's purports, every single line has meaning. And we shouldn't become despondent that so many people are coming or so few people are coming, regardless of whatever the situation is. We are on the right path, we follow that path, we follow those principles, we engage in service to the Lord, and everything else will automatically fall into place. One time in London, one of the first times that Prabhupada visited London, when the devotees had managed to set up a fledgling temple in London, the devotees wanted to put on a big program. Their spiritual master was here in London for the first time, so the devotees wanted to advertise it, so they hired a big hall in London, Conway Hall, which later Prabhupada gave some very famous lectures in Conway Hall. And for the 50th anniversary of the installation of the deities in London, some 4 years ago, we hired that Conway Hall again. It was a very big program. And we did a big program to celebrate that 50th anniversary. But at the time the devotees hired Conway Hall, something like a half a dozen people came to see and hear Prabhupada. It was a complete flop. Devotees went all over London, putting up posters, advertising, going out on Harinam, giving out leaflets and flyers, and advertising the fact that their spiritual master was now here in London, all the way from New York. Please come and see, hear the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. Nobody came. Half a dozen people came, or a dozen people came, in a hall that would hold 500 or 700 people. So the devotees were very disappointed, and they apologized to Prabhupada for the fact that their advertising and their endeavors to please him and to spread the message of Mahaprabhu was a failure. Prabhupada said, no, where's the failure? You didn't see Narada Muni? You didn't see Brahma? Brahma came, Narada Muni came. Narada was dancing in the evening arti. And Prabhupada said from that time, he gave the instruction that on the altar for Radha Landanishvara, there should be a seat set aside for Narada Muni. Shiva Shuka Narada. We sing it in the song every evening when we're doing the Gora Arti. Shiva Sukha Narada. What are they doing? They're coming and they're appearing in the arti. We can't see them, but Srila Prabhupada could see them. Shiva is coming. These great, great personalities are there. They're appearing. We're not just reciting these songs and reciting these slogans for no reason, that there's nothing behind them. This is the reality. of the movement that we are a part of. This is the reality of this philosophy that we are following. These great, great personalities are supporting us. They're behind us. They're giving us the utsaha. They're giving us the incentive to carry on, even in the face of so many obstacles and when we become somewhat despondent. So these great personalities are there. They're coming to the evening arti. We're also participating in the evening arti. We're also dancing and singing and enjoying playing the drums and the kartals and the harmonium, and everybody can participate. Those are the fortunate souls. And then through that process, this wonderful, blissful process, it's not a process that's stagnant where you just recite prayers and you say amen, this and that and the other. No, it's vibrant, it's alive, it's musical, singing and dancing and relishing the holy names of the Lord. And in this way we make progress, we go forward, and we are also a part of that. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Brinda. So we're a part of we're the Gaura Bhakta Brindas. This is us. We're even included in that mantra. We're so fortunate. So we should relish our great, great, great good fortune and dive in at every single moment in time. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? 8:15. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they're struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So don't allow the mind to dictate. Rise above the mind. And then you'll always be happy. We always allow our mind to beat us over the head with it. And then we follow the mind, the donkey following the carrot, and then we're gone. Way gone. So there's always some obstacle, there's always some problem. But if we really relish chanting our 16 rounds, even that is the mercy of Prabhupada. I'm going to answer your question in a minute. But in the beginning, in '66 in New York, when Prabhupada started Iskcon, Prabhupada instructed his disciples, like his spiritual master instructed him, Prabhupada instructed his disciples to chant 64 rounds. Because that's the standard in the Gaudiya Math. 64 rounds is the standard. Every disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj, including Srila Prabhupada and all his godbrothers, they take a vow to chant 64 rounds. And that is the case even today in the Gaudiya Math, in the other branches of the Gaudiya Math. You take a vow, you take a vrat at initiation to observe the four regulative principles and chant 64 rounds a day. So the devotees went off and they got their beads. They didn't even have beads. They went down to the curtain shop and they got beads that are used for making curtains, and they got those beads, they bought those beads, and they strung them up themselves. And after stringing them up, they gave these to Prabhupada. Prabhupada chanted on curtain beads. There was no tulsi, there was no neem, nobody even knew what neem or tulsi was. But Prabhupada chanted on these, and gave them to his disciples and initiated them, said, now chant 64 rounds. So the devotee went off and 64 rounds, Hare Krishna, Krishna. It just didn't work. It just didn't work. They couldn't do it. It was impossible. So Prabhupada adjusted. He said, okay, then chant 32 rounds. So they went off and tried 32 rounds. It didn't work. So then Prabhupada said, okay, 16 rounds minimum. So that's it. And that was his concession. Whereas all the other disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj and all their disciples of their disciples, they're obliged to this day, I know many of them, they chant 64 rounds. I've no idea how they do it, but they do it. That's their vow. Prabhupada was so merciful. So we get the same benefit by chanting our 16 rounds as the other mats get by chanting 64 rounds. So see how merciful, how liberal Srila Prabhupada was. Srila Prabhupada is to us to this very day. He's given us everything. He's made it so easy. So easy. It was already easy. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, there are no hard and fast rules for chanting. Simply chant. Nam Bas, even chanting with offense. Something is there. So many people on Harinam, especially in the Western countries, when we go out on a Saturday night in London, they're all sitting around in the bars and the restaurants. All the tables are outside on the street. People are drinking and really intoxicated. People are on drugs and everything. And they go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. They're chanting in a mocking way, but they're getting the benefit. Just like I did. I was chanting in a mocking way when I first met the devotees. But I got the benefit. The power of the holy name is so strong. So we have taken a vow now to chant 16 rounds. So that's the minimum. And we should stick to that. Especially those devotees who have taken initiation, we should stick to that. And those who have not taken initiation, they should bring themselves up to that level of chanting 16 rounds. And get the full benefit of being a member of this wonderful international society for Krishna consciousness. And no more material birth, no more death, no more disease, no more old age. This is the last time round. As Prabhupada said, give this one life to Krishna. This one life, out of so many millions of lives, give this one to Krishna. That's all we have to do. Sorry, Prabhu, you had a question.
Prabhuji, what is the right path to finding your spiritual master?
That's a very good question. Yes, that is the perennial question. So in that 434 verse, Tadvidi pranipratena pariprasnena sevaya upadekshanti te janas jnaninas tatvadashinaha. Prabhupada says in the first line of the purport, the path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly very difficult. And he goes on to say that without approaching a spiritual master, it's even more difficult. So how to find a spiritual master? I was reading today, again from Narottam Das Thakur, that he sought the shelter of his spiritual master and he wanted to take initiation straight away. But his spiritual master told him, no, it's not our system. You cannot take initiation straight away. You have to spend a year with the spiritual master and he studies you. And not only does he study you, but you have to study him. And Krishna from within, he guides you towards that person. And that person, he also guides you towards Krishna. So it's a reciprocal arrangement. There's the Chaita Guru in the heart. Ultimately, we are all followers, we are all disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya. He's our Shiksha Guru from all aspects. There's no doubt about that. And my spiritual master, when he initiated me, Satsvarup Das Goswami, he told me, my job is to connect you with Srila Prabhupada. And if I have done that, then my work is successful. That's all I need to do. Connect you to Prabhupada. So when we're connected to Prabhupada, we're connected to the whole Sampradaya. And Prabhupada is giving us instruction at every single moment in time. So ultimately, Srila Prabhupada is our spiritual master. But we need a day-to-day guidance from a bona fide spiritual master who will connect us to that Sampradaya. The idea of initiation is a formality. We have taken initiation already in the heart by dedicating our lives to the best of our ability to following Krishna, to becoming devotees and to come closer to Krishna as much as possible. That is initiation. But recognizing that in the public arena is like when a boy and a girl meet, the recognition of their love for each other is the marriage ceremony, which is the public display of their affection for each other. Similarly with initiation, the formal initiation of sitting down in the fire, having a yajna, getting your beads, getting your name, that is the formal recognition. Already, Narottam Das Thakur was a disciple of his spiritual master. But in order to test him, Srila Prabhupada says in that purport to 434, one must be ready to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when one is ready to pass the test of the spiritual master, then he pleads with Krishna from within, please, please, please guide me in such a way that I can approach a bona fide spiritual master. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in one of his famous poems, one verse from the poem, he says, when, oh when will that day be mine, my offences ceasing, taste for the name increasing? When, oh when, will your mercy shine? When, oh when, will that day be mine? So when we start chanting the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking ourselves lower than the straw on the street, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, ready to offer all respects to others, in such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of the Lord constantly. Then Krishna will reveal the spiritual master. But we have to, what can we do? We just depend on Krishna. We can just throw our hands in the air and say, oh, great Krishna, I don't know where to go. I don't know who to take shelter of. I don't know, but it will come. And when it comes, the revelation will be automatic. It will be so obvious to say, wow, how did I not see that before? But it takes a lot of faith. And we make that leap of faith. But we're already convinced. And how are we convinced? We're convinced by reading Srila Prabhupada's books daily, scrutinizingly. Prabhupada says in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, one should scrutinizingly study this book, this Bhagavad Gita. Scrutinizingly study every single word. And then from within, the Chaita Guru, the Lord in the heart, he will reveal that direction in which we need to go. So keep on doing what we're doing, and the Lord will reveal. Is that okay? Okay. You were waving. Oh, you were doing Hari Bol. Sorry. Jai, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol.